Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today we have a good one. We're going to be talking about the keys to consistency in Valorant. One of the most common questions I get is how to be consistent. I'm going to break it down for you in this video and explain consistency through and through, hopefully helping you guys become more consistent or at least have a better understanding of consistency. If you guys enjoy the video, make sure you leave a comment, leave a like on the video, and subscribe for more. And reminder, I am streaming pretty much daily on Twitch right now, so if you guys want to come see me trying to grind my way up to Radiant right now, I would really appreciate if you stop by twitch.tv/Dragonmar. With that being said, let's start the video. Now, in the first part of this video, we'll be talking about the basics, which is not the main point of the video, but it's still going to be important if we're talking about the keys to consistency in a game like Valorant. Now, the first thing we have to talk is that I am a solo queue player and I play Omen, which is a support agent. Very important to understand this, that this is the lens I am looking at all of this from, because it makes the most sense to me. Now, if you are someone who only plays in stacks or with a duo partner all the time, maybe some of this stuff could be tweaked a little bit, but I still think the basics are going to stay the same for everyone. First and foremost, the most important thing when it comes to playing consistently in your games is, of course, your playtime. How much are you actually able to play the game? Anyone who has gotten good at a game will tell you this. They played that game a lot. There is no way around this. If you can only play the game an hour a week or a few hours, on the weekends, I am sorry, but you are going to have a hard time being consistent. This doesn't mean you can't improve, but it is going to be very hard to be a consistent player. The next thing is very straightforward as well, and that is, of course, warming up. Warming up is always a good idea, whether it's just a quick 5-10 minute warm up, or maybe you want to spend like 30 minutes in a couple death matches, which is what I do. I have found warming up works for me. Again, it works for me, not everybody, but I can tell you, when I first get on my computer, hand on the mouse, ready to go, no, I'm not ready at all. I have to warm up a little bit, or else I just feel kind of awkward in my setup, and it's not till like the middle of that first game where I'm ready to play. And then the final thing I want to say here, just to cap off kind of the basic parts here, is that if you can only play sporadically, as I was kind of talking about with playtime, which is more centered around how many hours per day can you play, if you're only able to play like once a week, like on the weekends, or maybe an hour on this day, a couple hours on this day, a few days later, that's going to be really tough to be consistent in this game. Because one thing I've noticed is that when I take time off the game, I'm always a little rusty when I first come back. And if you're always taking time off in that sense, you're always going to be a little rusty when you come back. So if possible, just remember that is going to hurt you in the long run for sure, and make it extremely difficult to be consistent at this game. So now that we've kind of covered the basics of sort of what will allow you to be a consistent player with playtime, warming up, and understanding about sporadic play, I think we should talk about why is it so hard to be consistent in Valorant. Because a lot of people do not understand this core concept, and instead they're just like, they know they're not consistent, but maybe they don't really understand why, or that, I'm going to say this, it's not necessarily their fault to the extent they may think. So it has a lot to do with the amount of variables that can change in a game like Valorant, and especially from each match to the next match, right? That's what we're talking about here, is how many things are going to change from match to match, and how are we going to adapt to that? First and foremost, teammates. Teammates are changing every single game unless you're playing in a stack. Remember, I'm looking at this as a solo queue player. With that, their playstyle is going to change, all that kind of stuff, right? Then the enemies are going to change. You're always be playing new people each time for the most part. Maybe one or two will be there. You might recognize some people here and there. But again, the enemies are changing from game to game. So is their playstyle, all that kind of stuff. Then we've got the maps. Maps are consistently changing, except for when you get like Icebox 3 times in a row. Not sure how that works, but the maps are going to change, which is also going to affect the way you play on those maps, right? Because you're not going to play Haven the same way you play Split. Then the next thing is the communication on your team is going to play. Depending on who your teammates are, some may talk, some may not talk, right? Some may be toxic, some may type in chat, some may ping a lot, some may not, right? Everything is changing. Next is your team composition, who you're playing, the agents your teammates are playing, who's insta-locking duelists. Do you have a smoker on your team? Is anybody playing a sentinel? All of that is changing, including your agent. Your agent is almost always going to change for the vast majority of people who don't insta-lock. A lot of the people who I have helped in the past do not really have a main agent. A lot of people in chat who ask me questions do not have main agents. They just kind of play everything. So your agent is consistently changing. And with that, guess what? Your positions and your setups are going to change too. Most likely you don't play each agent on the same site. It's not like you could play a Killjoy the same way you would play a Sova. They just don't have the same utility. So the way you change, the way you play has to change as well. And then on top of that, you've got the tendencies of enemy players and your teammates as well. How do they like to play the game? Is the enemy team you're playing in this game more aggressive than the last game? How do you react to that? Or vice versa, is your team more aggressive? Are you able to compensate for that new aggression that maybe you're not used to if you're more of a passive player, which I am, right? Or how about this, the way the enemy team uses utilities? How are they executing on sites? What are their overall strategies and the different counters they're using? This list can go on and on, right? I just went over 2 minutes of going over just listing things that change, and there are so many more. But the general idea here, what's really important to understand, is that consistency is hard in Valorant because there are so many variables changing from each match that it is almost like you're playing a new game in each match you go into in a certain way, because depending on how an enemy team plays, it may be something you've never experienced before. How are you supposed to prepare for that, right? How can you be consistent in that situation? I'm going to use an example. I got 13-0'd the other day for the first time in my life in Immortal Elo. I have never gotten 13-0'd before. And in that game, the level of aggression and the level of just the ability of these other players to just run through us was something I really hadn't seen before. It just felt like me and my teammates had no counter to it. That is not a good situation for me to be consistent in, right? So let's talk about how you could take all of these variables and use something to your advantage to be more consistent. And we're going to get into the main points of the video now. After painting what was somewhat of a bleak picture for the future of our games in terms of consistency, I think that there is a rather simple answer to this question, and something that honestly I may have overlooked when I was kind of trying to initially help people with this question. Because one thing I have realized is that I am a very unique player in the sense that not only do I play support, I also play Omen, which is smokes, and I'm also, I always make comms, and I like to IGL, right? I'm kind of unique in that situation. You don't get a lot of people like that in all of your games. And the thing I had to realize is that I'm in all of my games, right? I'm there. It's me. I'm present. Dragonmar is going to be on Omen, right? And he's going to be making calls. That's it. And other people don't have that. So that's when we get to the first point. And the key here when it comes to consistency is we're trying to limit the variability from game to game. And I don't want people to get mad when I say this, but the first point I want to make is to play the same agent. And the reason you want to play the same agent, and the reason that I have been able to get so good at Valorant, in a short period of time. Remember, I was immortal in the first act, right? I was a very good player right away. And I think the reason that this happened is because I played one role, kind of one agent, right? I played Brimstone technically at the time, and I, kind of switched over to Omen. But the reason I played the same agent and the reason this works is because in each game you go into, you go in knowing the agent you're going to play and how you like to play them. And then what happens is as you go into these matches, one after another, game after game, day after day, winning and losing consistently, right? No one's just winning. I'm always losing as well. You start to learn and you start to realize things and you start to understand patterns and learn counters and learn setups. And guess what? After a while, you have enough knowledge to counter almost any situation you're going to be put into. And that is the level of mastery that I am at with Omen currently. And that is the reason that when people, talk to me about consistency and how I stay consistent, I sometimes don't give them the best answer because I forget that I just play, for the most part, one agent in my competitive games. And I have gotten to the point where I am able to look at an enemy team comp and know exactly how I'm going to play against them. Or, for example, if a team I'm playing is aggressive, I know how to play against it. If they're passive, I know how to play against it. And it's all because I know the agent I'm playing and I know how I can play against these things because I've already done it. This is something people don't understand. When you play new agents all the time, every game you're switching up the agent you're playing, you're not going to master those, right? You're going to be a jack of all trades, master of none, which can be fine. But what's going to happen is your consistency is going to suffer because you are going to put yourself into situations where you do not know how to react, and you are going to get pressured on defense and not know how to react, what abilities to use, how to move throughout the sites and the maps. These are really, really important things to understand that people just don't get because they're playing different agents on every map they go into, depending on the team, because, you know, maybe they don't insta-lock or they just fill or whatever, and they don't have the answer to every question. And that is the point I'm trying to get across. When we're trying to limit variability, when we're trying to limit the amount of things changing game to game, one of the best ways to do that is by playing the same agents. Now, if you have maybe like 2 or 3 agents you play, this can work as well, especially if they're map specific agents. That way you can kind of master that agent for the map. That makes more sense. But the quickest way, in my opinion, to learn and to get good at a game like Valorant is to pick one agent and stick with it, obviously match it to your playstyle, and just learn everything and just pay attention to everything so that whenever you're playing in these games, you know exactly how to react to every situation. That is how you stay consistent. That is how you know what to do, because at that point, it just becomes a mechanical thing. It's, can you hit your shots at that point? You know where to move. You know where to flash. You know where to smoke. Can you hit your shots at that point, which is unfortunately where I struggle, right? And we all have seen that on stream. But nonetheless, this is the main point of the video, is that consistency comes from limiting the variabilities in your games, and the best way to do that is to play the same agent game after game. Now, moving off of the main point, I will also say that it is very possible to improve your consistency as well through your positioning, and in particular, playing positions where you are comfortable. So one of the really important things to understand is that if you are a player who switches agents a lot, sometimes you can kind of get past that main point I just made if you're able to play the same positions, especially on defense, of course, with these different agents. So for example, if you are very competent with Cypher on, let's say, Split, playing on, let's say, B site, well, maybe when you switch over onto something like an Omen in the next game on Split, because maybe someone else took the Sentinel, you also play B site. And if you're able to keep the consistency of your position, sometimes that also is able to give you what you're looking for without playing the same agent. It's a very simple concept, but when it comes down to the choice you have in each game between what you can and can't do, you're really locked into 2 things: where you play and who you play, right? I mean, that's really it when you think about it. You can't choose teammates, you can't choose the enemy team, their comp, anything like that, but you can choose those 2 things. And when you choose those 2 things, you determine the level of knowledge that you are going to bring in to that game from your previous experience. This is game sense, by the way. This is why, if coming from a game like Counter-Strike or a game like Overwatch, those players are inherently better than other players coming from other games, because it's more tactical and they understand roles and positions and sort of like how team comps and synergy, all that kind of stuff works. It's why Counter-Strike players are so good in clutch situations, even in a whole different game, because they understand how to play in those. And it's the same thing in Valorant. If you're going into every game in a new spot with a new agent every time, you're gonna have to keep learning over and over and over, and that wheel is gonna keep turning, and it's never ever gonna stop. And you're never just gonna be like, oh, I know exactly what to do because I've already played this, because every situation is gonna be new. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to get to that point, which is why the main point of the video was, of course, playing the same agent is the quickest way to get the consistency you want, because it's just the honest truth. I really do believe that. And of course, if that is not a possibility for you, that is where the second point comes in, of playing the same positions so that you can still retain that knowledge from those positions and use that on other agents, right? And that way you know how to maneuver around those positions. And that, my friends, is consistency in a nutshell. You've got the basics of playing the game a bunch, warming up before you play, and making sure that when you do play, you know, you're playing as often as you can and it's not too sporadic. And then for within the game, within the choices you can make, playing the same agents and the same positions is what is going to allow you to be the most consistent player you can possibly be and be the best player that you can be as well. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that is where we will end this video. Consistency is not an easy topic to sort of talk about, but I do feel like this video was important to make because at the current time, these are my thoughts on consistency. It is a very straightforward answer, but I just think that people need to understand, first and foremost, why it's so hard to be consistent, and second, how easy it is to sort of be the most consistent you can be with such a simple answer, but it just makes sense, right? It is just true, I think, inherently. And if you disagree with this, I would actually love to hear why, because essentially what I've done is I've sort of figured out how can we limit the variables from changing game to game, and how can we use our knowledge from previous experience, how can we use our game sense to our advantage. Playing the same agents, same positions were the first things that came to my mind, and the most simple answer, and honestly the best answer I could come up with. If you found something else that helps you be consistent, I would love to hear it. Leave a comment, and honestly, if it's good enough, maybe I'll even have to make another video on it, because I really do think that this is the true answer to these types of questions. If you guys enjoyed the video, you learned something new, or whatever it may be, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe for more. I'd love to see you back here in the future, and I'd love to see you guys on stream. If you have questions about the video, come ask on stream. I'll be live, and I'll see you there. Take it easy, and peace.